We're going to take 3 questions, so keep them in your minds, and then I will come back to all of you. Okay, so 3 questions.
Thank you very much. My name is Haya Dennis. I am I represent the Kenya Students with Disability Association. So I'm so glad with my friend here who has just presented on the inclusivity, and I feel at home. I had a question to him. Now, you've talked of platforms being accommodatable, being inclusive, the media platform and online platform. So, and that is still not happening, to best of my knowledge. Now, do you think there should be a policy implementation? Because as it is now, there are suggestions. So do you think there should be a policy implementation on the same to ensure that that really happens? Thank you.
I did appreciate the way you presented. I have a question. How do you manage to involve mentally disabled people in this system you're talking about? Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Christian. I work with Search for Common Ground, and I have a question for Vardon. I was very much intrigued by your presentation, not only your personal story, but also the work that you're doing in trying to curate news to achieve public good. But I'm particularly interested in the equity aspect, which you've also mentioned towards the end. How do you find this model, Sparkable, applied in contexts where there's violence and conflict, and also where there's a lot of disproportion in terms of poverty and access to resources? Definitely information, the information ecosystem is toxic to achieve peace-building goal, but so many people who need that information are living in poor contexts. How do you make the balance? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your questions. The 2 questions were quite intriguing. Let me start with the first one. Now, you want to know that in May 2022, we were at Trademark Hotel here in Kenya to officially launch a standard digital policies for persons with disabilities. I'm happy you said you feel quite at home, and indeed you are home. And that for Africa started in Kenya. To tell you that we leaders of persons with disabilities are leaving no stone unturned, because before now, we depended on people, on family, on friends, on society for almost everything we had to do. And that's why persons with disabilities were regarded as people who are dependent, as people who are a burden. If you look at, for instance, the ongoing conflict in Cameroon that I spoke about, I found out in my research that persons with disabilities have been abandoned to themselves as people flee, simply because they lacked assistive technologies and they were unable to move along, and so they were simply abandoned. Some of them died of abandonment, others died of starvation. Now, the situation is gradually changing because inclusive digital technologies are there in their numbers to facilitate independence, community independence to persons with disabilities. I can tell you without mincing words that the process is very slow in Africa. But it takes only collective efforts like what we are doing here to see how we work together to better the situation. It is not the same today as it was 5 years ago, and we will be gathering next year for the next edition of Build Peace. It would not be the same. I pray so. Thank you. And then for the second question, you want to know how persons with mental disabilities can be included in, peace building. It's a very important question. And I want to tell you that mental disability or mental impairments, let me put it that way, is in different stages. There are persons with mental disability who still are very able to take part in certain activities, especially if they are well trained. I know that even a lady with a mental impairment knows that they need to breastfeed their children. And so, to persons with mental impairment generally know that they need to live in a setting. It is true that during certain days, maybe their impairment make them to act different than other days. We need to understand their temperament to know when they have a more level head, and so that at that moment we could see how we gradually adapt them to changes. Try that, and I tell you that you will tell a different story in the months and years ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the question on what happens in conflict regions. I think we've heard in the panel before that it's so important to go upstream, right? You can do content moderation downstream, and especially in conflict regions, that's even more important to look at the upstream, like the design of platforms. And that's why we think it's so important to look at, or to create a system, and whether it's Sparkable or something different that we all come up together, but we need to create systems where the financial incentives are sort of aligned with content moderation, are aligned with surfacing, amplifying content that is not divisive, not polarizing, but actually can build peace, right? And so it's especially important in conflict regions to have platforms with business models that don't have a financial incentive to polarize, basically. So obviously, we're at a very early stage, and so all our content moderation is still a very, very early stage. But we have a financial incentive as a platform to do that, because we financially benefit, as does everybody else in that system, if we have content moderation in place, if we surface high quality content, and not if we keep people engaged as long as possible so that we can show them as much advertisement as possible. So I really think I see the work that we are trying to do as the most upstream possible, the business model, and then we can have all these downstream things like pro-social design that was mentioned, but then also content moderation, all these things, which everybody sort of has the same incentive to increase that and to increase the quality instead of just the time spent on the platform. Thank you.
Thank you. It's Ruby Davis from Peace Direct London. So this probably comes from the previous panel, and it was a question around what are we not talking about? And so as this panel presented, I was hearing something that resonated with me and hopefully with a lot of people. It is that when you're doing this innovative work, there seems to be an incubation period, and some of you use that word. And that period is also filled with a lot of disappointment and sort of trying to sell the idea to people. And a lot of you use words like, let's come together to do this. Or I think, Kishore, you even said, no one believed us when we were talking about this. I just want to ask any of you and all of you, how did you navigate the start of this kind of innovation? I mean, what do you have to share with us? And everybody here who is probably innovating or starting something that they need to socialize in their context. Thank you.
Okay, change maker workshops. Someone mentioned, I think it was you that mentioned your change maker workshops. I was going to ask, do you have one specific exercise of the workshop that we can use with our youth to help foster future peacemakers? So you can name one or two that you feel is important. Thank you.
I think, as we all know, the funding for the peace-building space has been very much limited, and it's dwindling, as we speak. So I'm wondering to all the speakers or panelists, what, when we leave here tomorrow, what is the key messaging? What is that key message that you want us to take away in order for us to build collective funding for digital peace building? What is it about what's going on right now, what's going to happen in the next 10 years, what is the advocacy messaging that you would like us to walk away from?
What I believe in, especially in the early stages, is that in some way, what I call the ideology of tech investors has kind of taken over our way of thinking. And they use words like scalability. But in my mind, as we develop collaborations between technologists and peace builders, we should actually be putting people and the process of peace builder in the center, and not the technology or the scalability of that technology. And I have lots of thoughts on how to do that. If you want to talk to me about that, then I can talk to it. And then in terms of the funding, I had a conversation this morning with somebody, and he wanted to try to involve business sharks and the military in the funding. And I 100% agree that we should try to do this, but how are we going to convince them that the process is the most important thing and not the tech investor talk? For me, that's the sort of crux of what I've been thinking about.
Yeah, thanks for the questions. Actually, so one thing about believing in new technologies for peace building is it's not wrong, and no one is to blame, because no one is aware of that these technologies can solve these conflicts. So it's a time for all the tech savvy people to come up with a prototype, a model, and then to show the world, okay, so through this mechanism we can solve this, and then solving that, proving that, then literally everyone will come to you, attracted to you, to support you. And that's what I see, because even earlier, yesterday, we had this traditional peace building over the digital peace building, and some of you raised right and some of you raised left. So still we have that, we have to find a way how to balance it. So we have to get toward it. As I mentioned, the trend of conflict is changing, and we have to change our practices as well. So that we need to develop models, the prototypes to show the world, and then I hope that we will get the recognition. So that's how happened in 2019. We were not recognized, but now everyone is talking about AI, right? AI for peace, and everything is the world is it's so loud about AI for peace building. So that is the mechanism. I would say that no one is wrong, no one is to blame, but we have to show ourselves. There are so many tech platforms here, so everyone needs to come as a collective to show the world that how technology is transforming the conflict and contributing to peace building. And the framework, of course. Actually, the DreamSpace lifecycle framework can be localized for all communities, because it's different types of skill sets that we are training young people to choose one domain, so which is they are passionate about, and continue in that journey. So it's open for everyone. And also, the third part, the grassroots innovation part, is something really needs to be done, because even when I started to work on this, I don't know the extreme challenges in my community. I saw, okay, everything is fine, but when I go for 3-4 times, I got to know, okay, even the challenges I never imagined that exist in my own community. So that is something we need to know, and we need to practice with our skill set to solve it. And regarding the funding mechanism, so DreamSpace is a social enterprise, and we are a kind of a NGO or a non-profit organization. So we are a social enterprise that works for the cause. So the DreamSpace lifecycle is often a self-funded mechanism where we do business in order to do peace building. So we do have all these skill set, we translate it into business, and 40% of the profit goes to this social mission. And that's how we are doing right now. But yeah, funding is always welcomed, and it is encourage our work, and we can make many models. So the 39 number of impact can be increased with the funding support, of course. And so to say, we were one of the Peace Direct awardee, and we received this $10,000. And it's an open funding, so to say, they have no restrictions. We were able to do some of the impact as well. And the Peace Direct Award, obviously, we received for the Project Isle for our peace monitoring, hate speech monitoring tool on social media. So these, I think, eventually everything will be changed, and everyone is here on the 10th year of Build Peace. I hope that these questions can be taken to the next level, and in next year, maybe we have the collective that supports each other. And thank you for the opportunity. Build peace.
Innovation and starting something, it's really difficult in the beginning. I think for me, everything I do, I've never done it before, and it's totally out of my comfort zone, also sitting here on stage and things like that. But I think if you are not, and that's my biggest learning so far from this year, is if you shouldn't be in love with the product or what you're trying to do. You should be in love with the persons or the people you want to serve. And so for me, it was a lonely road until I found community, right? And you are part of this, like the peace building community, responsible tech, digital rights, even just finding these words and learning, okay, there's organizations like Build Up, there's conferences, there's people who see things that you're also seeing, and that's sort of extremely powerful. And when you have that, I think you are sort of able to overcome all like challenges in terms of product or team or whatever like comes up. If you're sort of, if you know who you are doing this for, I think you always have this sort of drive or, you know, this fire in you that keeps you going no matter the challenges. So that's sort of on innovation. And then on funding, I also have a lot of thoughts, but I'll try to keep it short. So we were lucky to find a nonprofit fund who has sort of invested in us. But I'm I think after this year, I think it's really powerful to have the people who are using your product paying for it. And even if it's just a subset, for me, Wikipedia is the best example, right? 90%, or I don't know what the exact percent is, but just a small amount of people pay for it, but it allows the platform to be independent, right? Again, this financial incentive thing, right? And that's where we want to get, and that's why we're creating this model where we have a small subset of people who are willing to pay because they see the value in it, and that's enough to have the incentives, the financial incentives for everyone be towards the greater good, similar to Wikipedia. So I'm a big fan of trying to get people, or the ones you're trying to serve, a small subset of them getting to pay you instead of sort of looking for other sources of funding, which can lead to mission creep. So yeah, that's my thoughts.
And so for me, I'll be answering the question on how we have gotten to this level, or how I have gotten to this level. Usually when you have an idea, people discourage you quite a lot. There are those people who feel that what you are doing is very good, but you will not go past the first step. A lot of negative societal perceptions. I remember that I almost did not go to secondary school because people discouraged my parents from sending me to school, saying that it was mere waste of resources. Those resources would have better been invested on so-called normal children in the family. But my grandmother, however, wasn't discouraged. I can say she's the pivot of what I have become today. And she was not even educated, but she understood the importance of education to a blind child. And so I strongly advise that when you have something to do, stick to your dreams. Forget about side comments. Select from what you hear from those who surround you. Pick out what you know can drive your vision, and what cannot, just sift it out. And then my final thought for this conference, or for this discourse, is that I envisage an all-African journalist convention. I don't know how that is going to happen, but I know that there are stakeholders here who will support that mission to be achieved. I also dream of having more persons with disabilities take part in peace-building endeavors within regional organizations, that's the African Union, within even regional bodies like ECAS, like ECOWAS, and others. I know that that is also possible. I also dream to see more persons with disabilities take part in peace-building workshops like this. And I pray that Build Peace champions that mission. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your answers and your talks. Maybe we could just give them one last round of applause. That was really a great session.